Okay, welcome back, guys. We're going to go deeper into what we were talking about yesterday, okay? And just as a quick refresher, we talked about how your TH1 and your TH2 systems have to be in harmony, right, in order for your body to function the way that it should, okay? So remember we talked about with someone who has any sort of acute injury or persistent problem, right, is going to develop an area of acute inflammation, right? That's this TH1, okay, sort of immunity, right? It's where your white blood cells come in, they break down damaged tissue, they start depositing scar tissue, you get localized inflammation and pain, okay? And well, obviously sometimes not pain, right? We talk about that a lot. And you can develop immune suppression, right, throughout the entire rest of the body. So I want to go a little bit further, okay, and I want to kind of talk about what this does, or I should say how your brain plays a role in this after like a head injury, a car accident, a concussion, and then how it plays into your gut and how it plays back into the rest of your health. So I want to go through this, okay, because this talks about a concussion, okay? Now, realistically, we can replace this term concussion with any sort of injury, okay? This could be a sports injury, a slip, a fall, the chronic microtrauma of sitting at a desk, driving a car, anything like that, okay, that's essentially going to create inflammation. And I'm going to circle back on this specifically why, okay? So, but let's take the instance of a concussion or a head injury. Someone who develops a concussion, right? You're rattling someone's brain, you're slamming someone's brain against the inside of your skull. That causes this shearing force, the shearing injury, where it pulls the gray matter and the white matter apart, all right? Which means that we're separating the actual nerve fiber from its insulation, right? And the insulation breaks down, okay? What happens is that when those nerve cells are injured, now we have the downstream complication of your autonomic system, right? Your sympathetic and parasympathetic systems being dysregulated, okay? What does that mean? In a lot of cases, that means right here where it says microvascular injury, it's going to change your blood pressure, right? It's going to change how much oxygen and how much metabolites get to a certain area. So certain areas can starve, right? Essentially, I mean, and sometimes they die, but most times they don't. But areas become underactive, right, or dysfunctional because they don't get the proper nutrients and they don't have the proper connectivity and flow. And that's what you see here where it says reduced perfusion. That's reduced blood flow and oxygen, okay? So hold on to this quickly and look at this, because remember, we talked about autonomic dysregulation, reduced perfusion, all that sort of thing, right? So this, which maybe that's an injury, maybe that's a head injury or sitting over and over again, which produces a prolonged inflammatory state, okay? Because this next thing, this looks entirely complicated, but I promise you that it's not, okay? I want you to think about, so this over here, this says healthy gut, okay? Think about this. This is like a tube, okay? So realistically, this is like this, okay? And all these guys are on the inside, okay? And this is all your food that's in here in the middle, okay? So you see how all these guys, they have these little black lines right here that are joining them together, okay? Those lines are what are cementing those cells together. It's keeping things from getting from inside the tube, outside the tube, okay? And this is part of your body's immune system, right? When they talk about, when you hear quotes like 90% of your immune system is in your gut, this is what they're really referring to, because this is superbly important as far as what your immune system reacts to and what it does not, okay? So let's go back into play here when we talk about your gut's health and its ability to maintain the relationship between the two cells, okay? So when your brain is dysregulated, right, or when it doesn't control your stress response appropriately, it causes these cells to break down, all right, which is what we see over here, right, where you see this stuff kind of coming through. All of this stuff over here, this is what is coming in contact with your blood and with your immune cells, okay? So now your white blood cells and your B cells and your macrophages and antibodies are able to come in contact with proteins and substances that they wouldn't otherwise get in contact with, all right? And as you can see up here, this is what's called leaky gut, okay? This is present in a ton of people, and most people don't have a clue about it. It's most notable in people with autoimmune disorders and kids with ADHD, autism, and that sort of stuff, okay? I want to kind of focus first on that first group that I talked about, like people with autoimmune problems, because we see that a lot. Roughly 25 to 30% of the women I would estimate that we see have hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism, 90% of the time, is an autoimmune condition and will produce these sort of leaky gut symptoms. So it is really a big chunk of the number of people that we see. So what we essentially develop a vicious cycle, right, where now we started with an inflammatory process, right? A prolonged inflammatory state then creates hyperpermeability of your gut, right? Which means that you start developing allergies to foods that you shouldn't. Okay? Now what happens? You keep eating those foods and what? You're just throwing another log on the fire every time you eat that food. So now you have folks that don't, quote unquote, don't have a low back problem anymore, but their lower back still hurts because they've developed an allergy and systemic inflammation. So ultimately what we then have is a problem where your brain feeds down to your gut, creates a gut problem. Your gut problem then feeds back to your brain and prolongs the inflammation, right? Exactly what we just talked about. So what does an adjustment do? Look over here. What I talked about yesterday, if we can create the appropriate level of systemic immunity, we can knock out infection, right? We know that an adjustment is going to change inflammation. How about stress? Yes. Are people's toxins, will people change the amount of toxicity that they're exposed to if we alert them to it? Yeah, without a doubt. Or at the very least, their body's more able to adapt to it. The only thing here that we can't directly change are genes. And in fact, we know that epigenetic influences change the way your genes are expressed. So, boy, we can cut that guy. So this is a humongous opportunity that we have, right? People just think about us they think about neck pain and back pain and headaches and all the low-hanging fruit. They don't automatically think, oh man, I have a gut and a brain problem. A chiropractor is who I need to see. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to educate and change the public's perception of what it is that we do. And it all comes back to you being the most comfortable and confident person in the room when you're telling this story, or any story for that matter. So go have a very confident, fantastic Wednesday and share the love, spread the word, and change some lives.